Hello, my name is Frederik Steinmetz for ATutsPlus.com, and today we'll be creating a photo wall that has a single slider in order to control the disbursement of this photo wall. And this is used by dropping the photos into a composition and then using a script that we'll be creating in order to link them to the slider control. So let's continue. This is actually part B of a two-part series, so if you haven't watched part A yet, I highly recommend you do, because I don't think there's a lot going on that you can do without watching that part. And also, as I said, it's a series, so I'd also recommend you to watch, if you're not familiar with expressions, at least part 3 of this, because that's where we're starting with the script. And if you are not familiar with expressions at all, I'd strongly urge you to watch the entire series. So let's continue. Okay, now we're ready to modify our pictures, and for that we'll address the pictures as by their index. And as you recall from the previous tutorial, this has the index 1, this has the index 2, and this of course has the index 14. You can see it over here. So if you don't know the name of an item but you know its index, you can easily address it via script, and you can also address it by name, but therefore we'd have to rename all those pictures. And that's a little bit too much work for my taste. So I'll just address them by layer index. And of course, for that we have to make sure that there's nothing but pictures in the composition when we run the script. So I'll create a new variable, that's I, and it should be, for our purposes, 3. And the reason why it starts with 3 is we are creating two objects, the null object and the camera. So the first picture will now be indexed 3. And our I should be at all times smaller than 103. So first one, second one, plus 100 pictures equals 102, so it's smaller than 103. So you can see you'll get an error message if you don't have enough layers. And then of course the method will be I++ again. And that's our for loop, and let's start. First, we will use this factor that we created earlier, and the factor will be a random factor. So factor equals math.floor, and the argument that we want to, draw to the floor would be math.random. And the reason I'm using the math.floor and making this a little more complicated is, I'll explain this in a second, let me just finish typing, -10, is the math_random function only creates values between 0 and 0.99999. And if you want negative random numbers, or if you want whole random numbers, you'll multiply the result here between 0 and 1, excluding the 1, but including the 0. You will have, you can multiply this by 20, meaning you're going from 0 to 20. Multiply this by 21, so you're going from 0 to 20. And then you subtract 10, which means you're going now from -10 to +10. It's a bit complicated, but as far as I know, that's the only way to get random numbers that exceed the 1 and are below 0. So just remember, if you want -x to +x, you have to type in times 2 times x plus 1 and -x. Well, even if this seems complicated, trust me, it does work. And Let's hope you don't need it too often, or even better, understood what I was talking about. And now let's create a safety check. If the factor equals null, then we want the factor to be 1. Because if we have a factor that is 0, the picture won't move, because we're multiplying later on the factor, the slider control value, we're multiplying by the factor. So, oops, that's careful there. We are multiplying this by the factor, and if we, of course, have a slider offset of 450 multiplied by 0, the picture will stay in place. So just to make sure this doesn't happen, I'll increase the factor by 1 in case it's 0. Then we need a new variable, and that would be the position and x of the pictures. And for that I'll use the I, but since we couldn't start with this 0, because there is no index 0, I will just subtract 3 from the I. Remember, we're starting at 3, but the first picture should be offset by 0 units. So I minus 3, the modulo again, by, and now we need the tiles in X that we have over here. But if we just use win.text, win.numx, we would get an error message, or maybe even we wouldn't, but it wouldn't work, because we're trying to divide a number by a string, because what this edit text returns is a string. And there is a method to convert a string into a text. For example, if somebody types in 122 kilograms and use this method, it will disregard the kilograms. So it will only take numbers that are in your text and outputs them as a number. So I hope that makes sense. So if we type in 10 in over here, it will be converted from the string 10 in quotation marks to the actual number 10. So, and the method to do that is parse float, and then all you need is your string, and the string would be the win.numx. Oh, actually the numx and the win.numx is actually a field. But to access what's been typed into the field, we have to add the text. And of course, let's do the same thing for the position of the y, except for this time we will use the I minus 3 and divide it by the parse float of the win.num_y.text. And let's actually, this would disperse them, but they would be right next to each other. So let's create an offset. We could use an offset slider, just in the same way we created the offset control. We could create a slider for the gap in between two tiles, but for now I'll just take 10. If you want to, feel free to just repeat this. Add a second slider. Maybe you don't call it slider control, but call it offset control. Same thing. And instead of typing 10 in here, type in controller null.effect.slider control. But for now, I'll just take plus 10, or if you feel that 10 is not the appropriate number, you can go back into your script. Then we have to address the picks individually. So pick I, of course, equals active comp dot layer number I. And the layer in parentheses I is the index of the current layer. And the index of the layer number, at which point we are in our for loop right now. Okay, then we will have to tell After Effects that all these layers should be 3D layers. So pick one dot 3D layer equals true. This way, every picture will be a 3D layer. And now let's create our expression. Our expression will be, it's already a string, which we defined up here. Our expression will be for the x, so x equals, and if you want to insert a variable into your string, let's say I want this to be the tiles width, that of course wouldn't work because the tiles width or tile width is a part of the string now because it's inside the quotation marks. So if we want to add a variable to a string, what we need to do is, first of all, the string, then plus, and then the variable plus, and then continue with our string. And this way we can implement variables into the string, but their value will be regarded and will be treated as text in the output. And it will make, I'm pretty sure it'll make sense soon. And then, no, actually that's not the tile width, that's our position in X that we created up here. And of course every line needs to be terminated with a semicolon. And now we need a line break. We can't just hit return because that would break our line in the actual source code, which wouldn't work. So the way to make a line break in JavaScript, you need to type in \n. And \n is reserved. It's probably the only thing that you can't use as in this order inside of a string in JavaScript, but I don't think there's any place where you actually need to type in just \n, nothing else. And since this is a line break, we can just continue typing y equals, and then we want the plus pos y, of course, and continue our string, same thing, semicolon, \n, or semicolon, z equals, and I will copy this from over here. To do that, I'll rename this offset controller, and I will create a slider control, call it here, and then I'll just use the position, alt-click on the stopwatch, slider control, there we go, and just pick whip the slider, and there we have it. This comp layer offset control effect slider. Make sure the null here is named the same way as you named your null up here. So this is just a short way of retrieving information. It's sort of like a recursion. You retrieve information from your After Effects current file that we will send to your next file. So Control V to paste this in. Again, we need a line break, and then we need our three-dimensional array. Terminate this with a semicolon, and then again with the quotation marks. Now we see we have a serious problem. This will be treated as a variable, even though it is inside of, it's supposed to be inside of a string, and the reason for that is the string, for example, starts here and ends here, even though this is supposed to be the beginning. The fix for that is the double quotation marks are stronger than the single quotation marks, and both work. So we'll just exchange these, the doubled ones by the single ones. By the way, if there's a name for the single ones, let me know. And you can see by the way it's colored that this actually worked. Okay, so this is our expression that we add to the position of each of our pictures. Actually, since we want to randomize this, we'll type in times and again plus factor plus and then the tail of the script. So this would in effect create the expression x equals pos x, y equals pos y, and z equals slider times the factor, and then piece together the array. Now let's add this expression to the actual position of the picture. So take y dot position dot expression equals expression, and close the curly brackets for the for a loop, and close the curly brackets for the function disperse. Now we need to tell After Effects to start executing this function by pressing our disperse button over here. That's the disperse button. And to do that, we can say win.button. That's the button. It has to be the same name as this button. Dot on click equals, and in JavaScript, even if it's just one line of code, you'll have to write a function for it, but that's not a problem at all. Function, and also this is more than one line of code. We have a variable tiles in x, and that is the parse float. So actually we could have created this variable further up the stream, and we'd only have to type in over here once, but I forgot that, and so I'll just copy paste that for now. You can, if you want to tidy up your script, you can just change that, but I'll leave it like that for now. Number y text. Okay, those are the two variables that we need for the dispersion. Now we need to double check if we have the right number of layers, and to do that I'll type in if tiles in x times tiles in y, which is of course the total number of tiles that we have, is equal to active comp, our current composition, dot layers dot length, and that is actually the number of layers in the active comp. Then I'll execute my disperse function, and also I will hide our window, win hide, and this means everything, and close the curly brackets, and we'll make an alert message if it's not the right amount of tiles. I want the alert message, and good thing is you can just type in alert and then the message that you need. The number of layers in your comp does not match the number of tiles. And then we can use a line break. Make sure you selected the right comp in the, and I'll use the small project, the single quotation marks and dot and quotation marks and semicolon, and that's close parentheses, and that is our alert message. Just to, if you are inside this composition but in the project selected the comp1, then it'll, even though this composition is active, it will try to execute the script for the comp1. So this is sort of a reminder. If you are, well, off course. And in order to show our window, we have to tell him win.show everything. And the reason why this is at the end is, as soon as you type in win.show, the script will pause until the window is hidden again. And I tried this, getting the win.hide behind the win.show, and it will never get to the part of the script where it hides the window, because the script will stop as soon as you show the window. And so if you have, there's a couple of different methods how to create a dialog box, and if you use this method, you can only use the win.show at the end of your script. Unless, of course, you're having a couple of dialog windows, then you have to carefully think about how to disperse them in your script. Now that we've gone this far, it's time to execute our script. So make sure you have the right comp selected in here, and go over to your script toolkit and say debug run. We can also press F5, and you will see I have one spelling error. Just delete this, try again, and I would have been really surprised if I would have been able to type this length of text without any errors. So let's just debug this together. Okay, I just realized I mixed some stuff up, and it would be very hard for me to re-record this, so we'll just correct this now real quick. The tile width is not a new number, or it would be easiest to just say that the tile width is the active comp.layers, no, not layer, .layer1 .width, and this will just check the width of the layer 1 and call it tile width. And the same thing is, of course, for the active comp.layer1, but this time the height. And for this we don't need the number, we need the tile width. So this would be times tile width. This 10 over here should be replaced by the parse float, and this here, same thing, and times, open parentheses, tile height plus 10. Okay, so this is it. Math floor of the I-3 divided by the input of the numbers in Y text field times the tile height that we got from the first layer plus 10, and here same thing but with the x. And there's one thing that I should have done prior to executing the script, and that is duplicating my wall. And the reason for that is, if I delete the offset controller, I will get 100 error messages that the expression is no longer linked to the offset controller. So this is something that I really love about After Effects. But once you click through all the error messages, you'll be fine. And that's just delete the camera, because if we have the camera still in there, we'll have 101 indices. No, that doesn't sound right. Indices, and it will create an error message. Let's run the script again, F5, and let's just say 100 and disperse. It will give us the error message that I expected. And if I change this back to 10 by 10 and press disperse, then we'll have the camera and the offset slider. You can see everything works fine. And if you wanted to, you could now use the camera and move around so that the picture wall is actually where you want it to be. Then you could go to press A and then Shift P and use the point of interest and position to implement it into your script. Just a lot of times, if you're not sure which values to use, you can go into your composition and create the part that you already know how it's supposed to look without the script, and then copy the information into your script. So one final check. We'll rotate the camera around a little and move over here and use our control slider, and you can see the images disperse as I slide the slider. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned a lot. It was a lot of information, and I think it's also a pretty useful script. That concludes my series about scripting for After Effects. And if you like this, leave a comment, and if not, don't. And have a nice day. Bye.